generation to figure out how we can exploit that experience and the energy of the Gen Yers.
Okay. Dr. Shikha Sharma, the same question to you, that because in the diversity there are various dimensions, and as I was talking to you, you do deal with large number of younger employees. What are the issues which are coming up there, and how do you handle those things?
So when I started working, I started working with a bias because my mom was always working. So I thought every woman worked. I had no idea that women actually didn't work because other than my grandmother, I mean my mausis, my aunts, everybody was working. So I assumed that's natural. But when I started actually running the organization, very interesting episodes started happening. Like for example, one of the young ladies who had started working with us for 6 months was a little casual in her approach. And obviously the HR called her and had a discussion with her, and the next day she didn't turn up for work. So when we called up, her father picked up and he said, I don't want my daughter to work. It was just for a little, she wanted to work, so I allowed her. But otherwise, I'm fixing the marriage and she will not come to work because she was crying. So that's the first time I realized that actually a lot of people maybe who have not worked very hard to get that professional education, or sometimes even who have worked hard, the family, the people who influence them, because the first influencer is the family and what happens. And if the family believes it hasn't happened before and therefore it cannot happen now, can be one of the challenges to counsel women. The other things, but at the other end, we also saw a lot of women who were from nuclear families and who really wanted to work. They made sure that they actually came back to work after their maternity leave. And they made all the arrangements, the support system, and many times I asked them, are you sure? And is your family supporting this? She said, I'm making arrangements, I'm negotiating with them. So a lot of negotiation at home starts happening once the child comes along, because in our families we usually believe it's the sole job of the mother to take care of the child, and participation from the rest of the family is limited. So that's another reality of women who want to really work in the workplace. Another thing which was very interesting was which was about taking hard decisions. So we have a lot of women, and whenever I've had a discussion, many times I find that women very softly take very hard decisions, and typically whom to let go, whom to counsel, whom, all those things. Whenever I ask for a feedback or an opinion, I always get the decision, which could be, it's completely gender neutral. It doesn't matter. I mean, there's nothing like, no, it's okay, she's my friend, or, whatever. That doesn't happen. Women can be very objective when they are working. Some things which, of course, are interesting. So in our organization, but we are a healthcare organization, and typically healthcare organization attract more women talent. We have 70% women, most of them are young girls. In leadership positions, we are grooming 1 or 2 ladies, and we hope to see them right up till the top positions. Simultaneously, we must also say that it's not that a month or 2 months goes by with when we realize that it's going to be an uphill task, because the issues which come to us sometimes, we can't believe our ears. We can't believe that they're actually quitting the job because of such a trivial issue, because of such a small issue. So we see both sides of the picture. We see women who are determined to work, determined to express talent, find their place under the sun, and we also find women who give up for the smallest of reasons which we could never imagine. Having said that, I mean, I'm an optimist. I think the technology is going to change a lot of things. Technology is going to create platforms for women as freelancers to start contributing through those technology platforms. Because one of the biggest things for a woman has been that if she doesn't take care of the child, who will? And many times she doesn't find that support coming. So I think with a lot of women becoming freelancers, software development going the way it is, technology platforms being built the way they are, I think we'll see a rapid change. So maybe women don't come to offices, but women will start working definitely.
Yeah. I think you have touched upon two very important points. So as Apurva, that yes, there are women, large number of women who want to do something. They have career aspiration. They have gone through the professional courses and they want to make a mark in their life. Also, the point that you raised is the support system. That is there a kind of a support system available for her? What kind of support system which is required? She as an individual person creates that support system, she fights for it, or she gives it up and say after 5 years, sorry, I can't continue my work because I've got a little baby, I have aged in-laws to look after, so on and so forth. So I think this is a very, very important challenge for young women who are entering into workforce. If it is like that, then how do we really help them to sort of adjust to this, face the challenge, and come out of it? Apurva, do you have any response to this?
So I think how do we help women? There is the outward stuff that one can do, which is really, you know, having creches at work, or allowing them to work flexi timing, or using technology so that they can work from home, etc., etc. So that, and then putting in policies at place, because you know that the leaky pipeline is really at between 5 and 10 years after they've started working, when they will have their first kid. So what all are you doing at that stage? So that's one part of it. But I think we also need to dwell on the inside of what's happening in a woman's mind, and you know, typically again, to throw some research figures, there was a study that was conducted by McKinsey recently on you know, they talked to the stars of a few organizations, both male and female, and at the middle level, and asked the males that how many of you think you're likely to succeed and reach the top. 78% of them said that they will reach the top, and they asked the same women, same feedback had been given to them. They were also the stars and on the fast track, etc. And exactly the same lot of women, and they asked those women, how many of you are likely to reach the top? And I think around 56% put up their hands. So there is an inherent lack of confidence that women suffer from. And you know, it doesn't come out, you see them today walking and talking, but inside they're always, am I here? Am I here because of something that's, you know, some diversity initiative? Am I really supposed to be here? So I think women do go through that, and we need to consciously recognize that however she looks from outside, inside of her, she's always a little more tentative than she ought to be or need be, and how do we help her? And I've seen that the best thing that really helps them, which will take time to happen really, is when they see role models. The moment you see 2 to 3 or 4 women at the top, you say, okay, I can also reach there. So I'm on the board of a couple of technology companies, and I don't see any women there. And then however much you do at the bottom of the pyramid or in the middle, till you somehow get 2-3 women there, and then you don't need to do so much, because you are getting subconscious signals that, you know, in this organization I too can reach the top. If they could do it, so can I. And somehow we have to sort of ensure that there are visible role models. And I increasingly tell senior women themselves, you know, once they've reached a certain level, they come, I also worked hard, so now I don't want to have, many women don't want to have diversity conversations, because the moment they start having diversity conversations, oh, you're having diversity, oh, you're a feminist. You're having diversity conversations because you are so they now pretend, now I've reached the top, now I'm a male. So I will not have any conversations around diversity, because, you know, don't involve me in all this womanly talk. But if you don't do this, how will younger women see you as a role model? So I tell girls that go out. Every morning at the water cooler, you will have one conversation and you will talk about some other woman in your organization who has done well, and compliment her and applaud, because who else is doing that? You will stand up and be seen as a woman male role model. So I think you really, I think that's for me the
Right.
critical point.
Maybe if I could just add, because I think, you know, you're all HR practitioners and you're looking for practical advice, and, you know, this confidence thing is pervasive. I mean, it's really out there. And one of the things that we started to do in the company, and it's not policy, it's not a written policy, but one of the things we've started to do is for every open role, we're looking for 2 women candidates. So we force ourselves to go find 2 women candidates. You can't imagine how difficult that is. You can't imagine how many of, you know, our male colleagues come back and say there are no women. So we say, go find them. Go have a conversation with someone. Because what happens is women who are 60% qualified, you know, even 100% qualified, will not post for a role. Men who are 50, 40% qualified will post. And this is this level of confidence. So reaching into the organization becomes really, really important. And I wanted to reflect on one more thing about women's responsibility in this. Because, you know, I was one of the women. I was one of the women that you just talked about, who felt, you know, I made it, I have no responsibility, you know, I worked hard, everybody else can work hard, they can figure it out. And to be honest, that's really, really unfair, because when you look at it, you know, I had mentors, I had people who were pulling me through the organization. It's really unfair, and part of the responsibility does fall on women. And before Snyder, I worked for a technology company. I worked for Dell. And I remember Michael Dell, he assembled a group of women in a room just like this, and he said, look, I hire, I don't know, 1 person a year, all right? I hired all of you. What are all of you doing about bringing more women to the organization? And I think, in a way, that was a really important message, because women do have a responsibility, especially senior women. And, you know, I think this concept of reaching into the organization and having, you know, a personal responsibility is very, very important. And the senior women in your organizations, you have to call them to task on that.
At this stage, I would like to share one experience from my personal experience. Long back, when I went for a job and in interview, I was not married that time, and in interview I was asked that, okay, so what happens if you get married? I mean, that question really stunned me. And because the interviewer was a male person, I asked him directly that, what about you? What changes were brought in your life when you got married? So why are you asking this question to me? As a woman, if I get married, I can handle my life. Later on, when I was conducting programs on interviewing skills, very often I used to ask people that how many of you ask this question to girl candidate, that what happens when she gets married? Of course, about 15 years back, many of them said it's a very valid question, because they said that we give a job and after some time a girl leaves, there is a kind of a disruption in our team, in our work, and all that. But in today's time, in 2016, I'm sure that not many people ask this question. Inside their heart, they must be assessing that what will happen if she gets married. But that also is now considered as a given condition. So yes, we do have a kind of a psychological barrier, psychological understanding about the other gender, and how we take this out in our interaction with them is also equally important. Moving forward, I would like to ask Annette, you, that what kind of differences, if at all, that you have noticed when they get inducted into organization, particularly with, because you have worked and interacted with many other cultures, with different ethnic groups. How do you see that integration is taking place?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think, you know, in Snyder, it's truly a multinational company. And in our executive committee, you met Chris Leong earlier, and myself, we're the I guess the two women on the team. We have a couple Chinese people on our team. We have an Indian in our executive committee. We have Americans, French. So it's truly a diverse. It's truly a diverse team. And one of the things I've noticed, and this is, you know, working for Snyder versus, let's say, you know, working for Dell. Right? Dell was primarily a bunch of Americans sort of transplanted around the world. And I mean, that's kind of, you know, how the company was led. And I guess you probably see a lot of companies like that. Maybe even your own companies are a bit like that. But Snyder is not like that. And Snyder truly is very multicultural. And I think the difference is, and I go to a lot of conferences and people say, oh, it's so impressive that your country president of China is Chinese, and that your country president of India is Indian. And oh gosh, all your factory managers are Indian. Isn't that amazing? How do you do that? And it's, you know, it feels like, at this point, it feels like a ridiculous question, but yet you realize it's a real question. And I think, you know, having a diverse executive committee and having a diverse leadership at the very top, it drives all the benefits through the entire organization. And I'm even starting to see a little bit around age, right? We just had, without, you know, going into too many details, we just had a younger than 50, right, person join the executive committee. And you can feel the difference in age. And I've heard of a lot of companies that have started actually creating sort of mirror executive committee groups of younger people. And we use the mirror group concept ourselves, where, you know, I have a team of digital natives, very diverse, very high talented team, and I use them as a mirror group. And I use them to bounce off ideas. I use them to think about, you know, the direction of the company, the direction of the strategy. And our CEO has just started also a mirror group. And I think that would not have happened if this younger person hadn't joined the executive committee and basically looked at us all and said, you're completely out of touch. I mean, you have to get in touch with you know, the other generations inside the company, Generation X and Y, and the digital natives and all the following generations. And these people, they have different value. When you talk to them about profit, it's interesting, but what they really want to do is they want to work for a purpose-led organization. They want to work for an organization that cares about something, that has a mission. Profit is interesting and obviously required to be successful, but is not the only thing. So I see a lot of the dynamic shift in the leadership team carrying itself through the company.
Yes, that's a good point. I would add one more question, that does this happen by itself, or somebody has to make it happen? Are there any kind of a mechanism, any kind of processes aiming at this particular integration?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, you know, you saw his picture in Chris's presentation earlier. I mean, Jean-Pascal Tricoire, he's a visionary CEO. He's the reason, you know, that I'm with the company, and, you know, without going overboard, I mean, I think he's really visionary in this regard, and he's truly a citizen of the world, and he's not trying to run Snyder with a bunch of French guys spread, you know, around the world. And he realizes that that's not the best thing for the company, it's not the best thing for the people. And so he's very purposeful about this, and he's very purposeful about developing and releasing the talent. And we're working hard to get the best local talent we can by giving our country presidents like Anil and like Rashna the ability to take policies that are meaningful for their geographies. And I think that latitude and that flexibility I think really help us. And in India, I mean, one of the first things that Rashna had me do is I did a leadership panel with a bunch of our women, and I am from corporate. And I think the reality is you don't have the same context all around the world, and having a diverse leadership team understands that.
Okay. Apurva, earlier you did talk about having role model which really inspires. Is there any other way to get the diverse group making more effective, more productive in the work organization? Actually, my question is, how do we really integrate that?
Okay, so are you talking across gender? Are you talking across specifically gender, right? Okay. So I think, as I said, role models, in my opinion, are possibly the best way, but reality is that, by the time role models develop, it will be a few years away, and therefore, to touch on maybe a topic that's going to get covered later, but, these reservations that people are talking on boards or etc., I'm not against them for the temporary, from a temporary perspective, because at least what it will do is it will push organizations to ensure that they've got some women at the top. I think apart from that, the second point that I did mention was this whole confidence building and then forcing. And I get a lot of my colleagues turn around and say, why are you putting these kind of diversity targets on us? But the fact is that if you don't put those diversity targets, they will not go out, because typically people want people like themselves around them. So it's